Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadin abduhu wa rasuluh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers, we studied last week about the objective of every Muslim. Can you close that window, yeah? The Islamic objective, and the objective being that we must please Allah, seek His pleasure, Ridwan Allah. Now, once we understand this, that Allah is the one who should be obeyed, should be worshipped, and whose pleasure we should be seeking, the matter then comes to our mind by way of a question: how then do we do that? And that is by two components for every action that we're going to do. And one of them, I'm going to make it very easy and very simple by just mentioning to you the evidences, because it's a lengthy topic and many scholars have spoken about this. And the second one, I'm going to include a few more definitions for your own benefit. So the first condition, or how we should then do the worship, is directing our sincere devotion to Him. So making sure that the action is purely for the sake of Allah. So we're seeking the pleasure of Allah first and foremost. We know that is the one whose pleasure we should be seeking above all else. But Allah Azza wa Jal, He doesn't accept any deed, no matter how big or how small it is, in His eyes, unless it's done for His pleasure. And there are numerous hadith and evidences regarding this. And the first of them is in Sahih Muslim and Ibn Majah on the authority of Abu Hurairah. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said that Allah glorified and exalted is He said, I am self-sufficient. Allah Azza wa Jal, He said, I am self-sufficient. Meaning He is not needy of the creation. Which, you know, when you discuss with some people and they say, why did Allah create us? Or Allah created us for worship. Oh, so He needs us then, does He? Without us, He can't survive. Na'udhu billah. Allah, He said, I am self-sufficient. I am not in no need of having an associate. So whoever does an action for someone else's sake, as well as mine, will have that action renounced. Whoever does an action for someone else's sake, as well as mine, will have that action renounced by me. Meaning it's going to be rejected. And it will be given in favor of the one who you associated with Allah. Meaning, Allah doesn't need anything. When you do an action, if you do it for Allah and with Allah, somebody else, meaning you got part niyyah, half niyyah is, your niyyah is corrupted. Half of it is saying, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. Then the intention, remember, the intention, ikhlas, is before you do the deed, whilst you're doing the deed, and after you've done the deed. Let's say, for example, before the action, I do it for the sake of Allah. Whilst I'm doing the action for the sake of Allah. After the action, for example, this talk I'm giving now, you just say, mashallah, the talk was so good. Now my niyyah may become corrupted. Why? Because now I start to think, oh yeah, mashallah, I'm getting the praise of the people. Or I start to ask you, for example, how was the talk? How was the halaqah? Did you like it? If you say yes, oh yeah, it was good. If you say bad, then I'm like, I'm sad. But if I was doing it for the sake of Allah, then all of that doesn't matter. So here, in this hadith, being mentioned that if you're now going to be doing an action for other than the sake of Allah, with Allah, then whoever the other person was, for whoever's other sake you were doing that action, then that is where you will go. That deed was for that person. Meaning, even if you come and say, I'm doing an action for the sake of Allah, and with Allah somebody else, then whoever you're doing it with Allah, then that deed is for them. Allah Azza wa Jal, He said He is self-sufficient. He doesn't need anything. So all our deeds, they must be for His sake. And let us mention two verses in the Quran now, which is chapter 6, verse 162 to 163. This verse, we mention it so many times in so many different lectures and talks and every time. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim, Qul inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mamati lillahi rabbil alameen, la sharika la. Verily, my prayer, my sacrifice, my living and my dying are all for the sake of Allah, and Allah Azza wa Jalla, He has no partner. No partner. Let's look to the order of what Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned. He mentioned first of all, Qul inna salati. So He mentioned the prayer at the peak of it. Yeah? Then He mentioned my sacrifice. So for example, sacrificing the animal for the sake of Allah, or anything else which you're going to sacrifice for the sake of Allah, maybe giving your wealth or your own health for the sake of Allah. And then my hayat wal maut, my life and then my death. Allah Azza wa Jal, He could have mentioned here maut wal hayat, could have mentioned death and my life, but didn't. No, He mentioned here first salah, sacrifice, hayat wal maut, meaning the order in them tells you the phases of your own life. You begin with the shahada, you begin with salah, then you begin with any sacrifices which you're going to make in your own life, then hayat wal maut. It shows you the entire methodology of the Muslim in seeking ridwan Allah. Then Allah SWT said He has no partner. In these matters, in all of our ibadah, we can't commit shirk. Now this shirk that we're speaking about here, where someone does an action for other than the sake of Allah, or let's just stick to this verse. If I associate a partner with Allah in this matter here, this is shirk akbar. To associate, to do salah to somebody else other than Allah Azza wa Jal, or with Allah, somebody else, then that is shirk akbar. Now if I do the action for other than Allah Azza wa Jal, that is known as shirk riya, the hidden shirk al-khafi, which is known as the shirk of showing off. Now some people, they call this minor shirk. I don't believe this is a correct term to use at all, because minor shirk makes it sound as if it's minor, and shirk asghar in the Arabic language when translated doesn't come up as minor. Minor, they have a different word for it. So why are we calling it minor shirk? Shirk asghar is the shirk lesser than the shirk which takes you outside the fold of Islam. I know it sounds long to maybe write that down and explain to someone that no, we don't call it minor shirk. We call it shirk asghar. But the explanation of the meaning of the word shirk asghar is a shirk which is not akbar, which does not take you outside the fold of Islam, but you are sinful as regards of it. And if we continue with that shirk an-niyya wal irada, meaning this has elements, shirk of your own intention and of your own life, with shirk riya and every single action, meaning you're doing everything for the sake of someone else, all the time, in everything. You're not even praying, for example, but you're doing actions which are really meant to be for Allah. So you have a deen. Your deen is, for example, life is short, let me enjoy myself. Shirk an-niyya wal irada. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he said this shirk is so dangerous. It's like the banks in the rivers, meaning no one can escape them. Like if you imagine you're in a raft and you're falling off like what do they call them, these things? Sea fall or whatever you call it. It's like this big waterfall and you're going down a raft and there's a big current that's pushing you. That current is going to push you in every direction. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he said that is shirk an-niyya wal irada. And this is mentioned about in many books of hadith. The second evidence is chapter Az-Zumar, which is chapter 39, verse number 11. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, "Say, O Muhammad, verily I am commanded to worship Allah alone by obeying Him and doing good deeds. Verily I am commanded to worship Allah alone by obeying Him and doing good deeds, sincerely for Allah's sake alone, and not to show off, and not to set up rivals with Him in worship." More than that, hadith of Bukhari and Muslim on the authority of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anh. He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, actions are but by intention. Actions are but by intention, and every man shall have what he intended. Therefore, he said, whoever's hijrah, whoever's migration was for Allah and His Messenger, his migration was for Allah and His Messenger. And whoever's migration was to achieve some worldly benefit or to take some woman in marriage, then his migration was for that which he migrated. So here, hijrah we know will continue until Yawm al-Qiyamah. And hijrah being mentioned here that it must be for the sake of Allah and His Messenger. Whoever done hijrah or traveled throughout the land for any other benefit other than the benefit of Islam and Muslims, then that is going to be null and void. That's why in Islam we don't have anything called holiday. People say, I need a holiday. There's nothing called holidays in Islam. The tourism of this ummah being mentioned as something else. The tourism of the ummah is to spread the deen of Allah around the earth. And that's why you find the Sahaba going from country to country. The adventures, the great battles, and maybe we could talk about the adventures one day, the glorious adventures of Khalid bin Waleed, what kind of adventures he was making. He wasn't going to Ayia Napa. He wasn't going to Washington and having teas with the tea party. Well, nothing like that at all. So any action devoid of sincerity means we're going to be in calamity. Now let's look to a very long hadith on the authority of Abu Huraira, and this talks about the first 3 people who will come on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and the first of them will be pronounced as a man who died as a martyr, as a shaheed. And he'll be brought forward to Allah Azza wa Jalla, and Allah Azza wa Jalla will remind him of all of the favors that he's given to this person. Look to this now, a situation here. The martyr, the shaheed is coming on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and Allah Azza wa Jalla is reminding this person about all of the favors he done for this person. I gave you good muscles, what did you do with them? I gave you good health, what did you do with them? I gave you good lungs, what did you do with them? Your eyes, your ears, what did you do with them? Allah Azza wa Jalla will say, what did you do with all of these ni'mah that I gave you? And he will say, I fought for your sake. I fought jihad, I died, and I'm a martyr, inshallah. And Allah Azza wa Jalla will say that you are a liar, you have lied. You did that, you did fight, but you done it so that people will say that you're courageous. This man, he is courageous. Yeah, he's very brave. And people, they said that. Then it will be ordered for this person to be dragged on his face and to be thrown within the hellfire. Then the second person. Now I want you to pay close attention to the order here that's been given. The order of and the rank of the people that's been given. Because the first was the martyr. The second is who now? Is the scholar. First is the martyr. Second is the scholar. The second one would be a man who studied religious knowledge. And he used to taught it. He taught it. He used to teach people it. And he used to recite the Quran as well. And he'll be brought forward, and again, the same thing. Allah will remind him of the favors, and then Allah will say, what did you do about my favors? And he will say, I studied religious knowledge, and I taught it, and I recited the Quran for your sake. Allah will say, you have lied. You done it so people would say, he's the good Qari, he's the good Sheikh, he's a good Alim. Look to him, he's on the satellite TV. Look to him, he's Grand Mufti. Look to him, he's from Hayat al-Kabar al-Ulama. He's from the highest permanent committee. He's got a gold robe, nice topi, good imama, miswak, yeah, big belly, big beard, all of this. Then Allah will order this person to be dragged on his face towards the hellfire. And in fact, in another narration, which you don't need to write down, but hadith of sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, most of those people who are the reciters from my ummah will be munafiqeen, will be the hypocrites. Meaning, it doesn't, even in other narrations which spoke about the Khawarij, it's mentioned them about how their recitation will be so beautiful, but not even go past their own throats. So these people go to Mecca every year on Hajj and they're praying behind this man and they think, subhanAllah, look at this recitation. I need to buy this one on an MP3 set. When I get home, iTunes, I'm going to download it. 320k BPS, yeah, MP3. Then afterwards, when they hear the dua and they get it translated, this man's making dua against the Mujahideen. He's reading the prayer for Musharraf. Yeah, he's having cocoa and coffee meetings with Obama and Bush and Blair, all these type of people. So this is something very, very dangerous. And we'll have a whole topic about the evil scholars at another point. Then the third person will be the one who was very rich. And this is everybody today, including all of us, by the way, in this room, because nobody in the West is poor. I remember I was speaking with a family member last night about who to give sadaqah to. You ain't gonna find nobody in this country who needs sadaqah. Everybody has got, come on, people, even the most brokest person, where does he go to? Sam's Chicken, isn't it? He's having a chicken burger, isn't it? Poor is Bilad al-Sham, where people are eating cats and dogs now. Yeah? So you can't tell me you're poor in this country. Oh, Aki, I'm miskeen, I don't have no money. What don't you have money for? Oh, I don't have enough money to buy myself some new £90 pair of trainers for Eid. What are you talking about? So this person, he was given all kinds of wealth, and he'll be brought forth on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and this person, he'll recognize all of those favors. And then Allah will say, what did you do about them? He will say, I left no path untrodden in which you like money to be spent without spending it for your sake. Allah will say, you lied. You spent your money supposedly in the cause of Allah for the sake of Allah, for the sake of me, but you only done it so people will say, I'm the most generous man. And we see this all the time. Who's going to donate £50 and we're going to have your name written on the brick in the masjid? Who is willing to give it? This man? What's your name? What's your father's name? What's your lineage? What's your bank account number? Announcing it to the whole world. And one by one, he's pulling out the notes and putting it up. So we see this sort of business all the time. This type of things are not allowed. They're not acceptable. Because why? They go against the very opposite of al-ikhlas. And the one who is meant to be mukhlis, the one who has sincerity, he can never have any element of a riya. What then is shirk or riya? Shirk or riya, this is the practice of performing any act of worship, whether it be by word or action, from the saying or from the action, in order to gain the praise of the people. What is the shirk riya? Shirk riya is to do any action of the word or the action of the limbs for the sake of praise of the people. And this is so dangerous. Why? Because many people, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he said about this, he said, this type of shirk would creep into my ummah so fast the way the darkness creeps in the middle of the evening. You know, if you look between the time of Maghrib and Isha, how quickly the darkness it comes. So quickly. It's not like the morning. You know, the morning time after in Fajr, you sit there, it takes a long time for the sun to come up. But the evening time, the sun comes down very, very quickly. Yeah, very, very quickly. It becomes dark very, very quickly. And he said it will be like the ants. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said it will be like the ants on the rocks in the dark night. That is how fast the shirk would creep into this ummah. And he was talking about shirk riya. Let's give some evidences in regards to this. I'll just give to you one, because it's like I said, it's a massive topic and it's been covered by many other people before as well. Chapter Nisa, verse An-Nisa, verse 142. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and when they stand up to pray, they stand with laziness and to be seen of men. So they stand up with laziness, but only just to be seen of men. So this is, there's many, many different evidences in regards to this. Let me finish by talking about how we can cure the shirk riya, how to make our actions purely for His sake. First of all is remember one hadith of shirk riya, and this is hadith in Musnad of Imam Ahmed. O people, fear the riya. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, O people, fear the riya. It is more hidden than the footsteps of the ant. It's more hidden than the footsteps of the ant. And when they asked about the protection from it, if it because it's so hidden, how the Sahaba they asked, how can we protect ourselves from it? He said, say, "Oh Allah, we seek refuge in you from doing shirk on something we know and from doing it on something we don't know." He said, "Oh Allah, we seek refuge from doing shirk on something we know and from something we do not know." So here you can appreciate and understand, you can do an action or an element of shirk riya on a matter which you know about. And that's pretty clear, you can rectify that matter. But what about those matters which we have done, we thought we done them for the sake of Allah, but they weren't for the sake of Allah. Again, let's go back to the hadith. Who were the three now that we brought on Yawm al-Qiyamah? What was the order of them? The first one?
Martyr, scholar and the Qadi.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
the
scholar and the
generous,
but gives the zakah.
The zakah. These three are such noble actions. The peak of them is the shaheed. The martyr who comes on Yawm al-Qiyamah, what does he think? Where do you think he thinks he's going? Firdaus. But Allah is saying this person, these are the first three people to be who are going to be accounted on Yawm al-Qiyamah. The martyr, the scholar, and the generous person. Meaning from these three, there's nothing much more you can do for the sake of Allah, really, if you think about it. You know, we talk about like, who is better? The one who, for example, is fasting maybe Mondays and Thursdays, or the one who was the scholar? The one who gave out a couple of leaflets here and there, or the one who was teaching thousands of people? Meaning his sadaqah jariyah, the scholar, is much better than the one who's perhaps giving money for the sake of Allah. Yeah, it's both good, both rewardable. If I give money for the masjid, if there is a masjid, if there's a money for a masjid and I give £50 for it and they build it, I may get reward for every time somebody enters that mosque. But who is better in the sight of Allah? The one who gave money for the mosque or the one who is the khatib of the masjid? No doubt the khatib. Then who is better in the sight of Allah? The one who gave money for the bricks, or the one who was the khatib, or the one who was working to make sure that the khatib never gets attacked by the kuffar, or the masjid that is protected from invading occupying forces? It's obviously going to be the martyr. So this rank, look to the severity of it, because none of us here were in any of those ranks really. I don't think any of us have built a mosque here. None of us here are scholars, and none of us here are martyrs. We're all still alive. Yeah. So how then? Why should we then not fear shirk riya? The second cure to the shirk riya is keep away from bad influence. Bad influence meaning bad company. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he said, you are on the deen of your own friend. So therefore, I would never keep company such as Usama Hassan, Mo Ansar, all of these apologetics and people who are moderate chocolate coconuts and people who sell out the religion, for a jar of honey and a packet of condoms. Never. I would never go near any of them. Why? Because the people are completely corrupted. They come to you, munafiqeen, and they say, look, we can get a lot of money. I remember one sheikh inside this country, he said he was approached by Cat Stevens. You know this man, he plays the guitar? And he said, look, well, but if we give you this money, will you shut up? It just reminded me of the Quraysh. They used to do the same thing with Rasulullah. Tell him, they used to speak to his uncle, Abu Talib. Tell him, what does he want? Does he want women? Does he want money? Tell him. Just tell him to calm down. He's giving us too much of a problem inside Mecca. Same thing, these type of munafiqeen, they come. And now even recently we were speaking to some brothers and speaking about some individuals from Salafi publications. One of them, he works with the police. And he has meetings with brothers trying to de-radicalize them. Then he goes back and then starts telling them. And there's no shame in mentioning these people. These people openly, they're doing their kufr and meeting brothers. People like Abu Hakim Bilal Davis, or whatever he wants to call himself. People like that doing it. And even other people as well. And the other one, most people haven't heard of him, but he's on the YouTube as well and giving lectures. And these people they are working with the police. And those people who the police tell them that this person is extremist, they go and meet them and they start to go and tell them about, that you need to calm down, you need to be more moderate, we can help you with this, help you with that, this type of rubbish. So keep away from bad influence, meaning someone who's going to corrupt your own niyyah and intention, and say, no, we can do it for some worldly benefit. Let's become a scholar for a worldly benefit. Let's go to, for example, and join some corrupted group, so-called mujahideen group, but in fact it is corrupted. And they say we're fighting for the sake of Allah, but actually they're not fighting for the sake of Allah. They're fighting for the sake of nationalism, communism, socialism. Even I'm sure these people in Egypt now, this party of Sisi, maybe they consider themselves to be mujahideen as well. I don't know. Maybe they do consider themselves to be mujahideen. Even one of them, I saw the message earlier on today. One woman, they said they got a new version of Surah Al-Fatiha, and they changed it all completely. And they mentioned the word, instead of the word Allah, they changed it and they meant Sisi's name. So they completely changed the Fatiha as well. So many different bad people. Obviously, you have another group called Hizbul Shaitan. We're not talking about Hizbullah. Yeah, I'm actually talking about, they actually call Hizbul Shaitan. They're known as the party of Shaitan, and you find them in the Middle East. There's about maybe 50 to 60,000 members of them. These are openly people who say we worship Shaitan. So these type of people you want to stay away from, because we're not just talking about now shirk riyah now. Someone who will make you commit another type of shirk akbar. Because when we talk about this issue of having sincerity, I don't want your mind just to go and say, oh yeah, I just got to make sure I don't commit shirk riyah. No, don't want to commit any shirk. So we stay away from the minor shirk, and we ask Allah to protect us from the major shirk as well. Ameen. Thirdly is adopt the correct Islamic character. The correct Islamic character is someone who's going to be man of taqwa, man of piety, and piety is going to be a stepping stone for you to obtain the Jannah. And your piety and your taqwa is then going to be subject to the rahmah of Allah. If you have the correct Islamic character, then you can never ever associate any partners with him in whatsoever. Fourthly, point number 4 is study to what happened to those people who showed off in the past. Those people who done things for the sake of just showing off. Maybe not to show off to one particular individual, but just to be seen that, we do this. Yeah? What was the lesson of them? The best example of that is the people who were fighting in jihad in the Battle of Tabuk, and they came back. And these are munafiqeen. They fought for the sake of just being shown off, and they were mocking some of the companions, and they said, look to them, look how they recite. Look to them, they got big bellies, all this, that, and the other. Those people were considered to be munafiqeen. Number 5, and this is very, very important point, is discover your own defections all the time. None of us can say we're perfect. All of us, we have issues within our own selves. All of us, we have room for improvement. And the one who says to himself, I don't need to improve myself, this man, he's a munafiq. This man, he is a munafiq. Why? Because nobody, even the Sahaba, they believed themselves to be prone to error and mistake. And they believed themselves to be not safe from nifaq. Then where does that leave you and me? That concludes our second part of the first module about making sure that we direct our sincere worship to Allah alone. Let us then, yeah?
You mentioned 5, what was the first one?
First one was, remember the hadith of Riyah, where sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, the shirk riyah, the thing I fear for you is the shirk riyah, is more hidden than the footsteps of the ants. And then the Sahaba, they asked, how can we seek protection in this? And then he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, say, oh Allah, we seek refuge from doing shirk on something we know and from something which we do not know. So something which we know and something which we do not know. And obviously look to this now. We always stay away from the shirk that which we know. Many people talk about, oh yeah, stay away from the Brailwi, stay away from the grave worshippers, don't become Sufi, don't become this, don't become that. But how many people are saying to themselves, forget them for a minute now, yeah? Because they're going to go to their grave and you're going to go to your grave anyway. These people are not even worth half of them arguing with, because there's complete muqallid, blind followers of some peer or whoever it is. But what about protecting your own self from shirk or riyā? If you missed any other reference, just ask me now before I go on to the next topic. Yeah. So, ready here?
Oh, yeah, I'll come back to later.
Okay, no problem.
The dua for the shirk, you have it in Arabic?
I don't know. It was straight from the book, so they didn't have it in Arabic. But I'll get it, inshallah. Okay. Number 3, part 3 now, for the first module of our studies, is following the Sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think we need one window open now. just open that back one, inshallah.
Following that.
That's good. Yeah, okay. Following the Sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, I'm hoping I can finish this in 45 minutes. I'll try my best. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, he says about those who observe sincerity in their words and their actions and follow the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, they are the true people of the saying, you alone we worship. He said, those are the true people of the saying, you alone we worship. The ones who have sincerity in their actions, in their words, and they follow in the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he said, you don't have to get this down word for word, but he said, all of their works, their words, their giving, their withholding, their loving, their hating, their apparent and hidden interactions are devoted to Allah Azza wa Jal alone. They do not seek the reward or thanks of the people, nor do they seek the high status in society. They neither seek to be commended nor avoid being defamed, because they consider people as the buried dead. How do they consider the people? They don't. First of all, they don't want any fame. They don't want any fortune. They don't want any praise, and they consider the people as the buried dead, who can neither benefit them nor harm them. Neither they have power over their life or their death or the raising of the dead. This is how they view the people. These people, they want to make all of their actions for the sake of Allah, and they want to make sure that nothing else will ever get in their way. No person can get in their way. Why? Because these people are already the living dead. The one who you may do shirk or do the action to show off for. Then Allah Azza wa Jalla, he said in chapter 18, verse 110, and whoever hopes for the meeting with his Lord, let him do righteous work and associate none as a partner in his worship of his Lord. Let me repeat this verse, because it's very important you understand this verse. Whoever hopes for a meeting with his Lord, let him do righteous work and associate none as a partner in the worship of his Lord. Now here, 2 important matters have been mentioned here. Good deeds, yeah, righteous work, and not to associate any partner. Now, not to associate any partner, we already understand that now. But what is the righteous work? Fudail ibn Iyad, rahmahullah, he said, the righteous work is that which follows the sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That which follows the sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, Aisha radiyallahu anha, she reported from Rasulullah as saying, and this is found in Bukhari and Muslim, any action not in agreement with our teachings, kullu amalin laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Any action which is not in agreement with our teachings, fahuwa rad, it will be rejected. Any action which is not in agreement with our teachings will be rejected. So therefore, when we do an action, it must be in accordance to the sunnah of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is then the meaning of a sunnah? Okay, so we have the word here, sunnah. As far as the put this up here. As far as the Arabic word of sunnah is concerned, it's derived from the root word sanan, yeah, which could mean road or practice. That as far as the Arabic word is concerned. As far as the Sahaba, they understood Sunnah is being the lawful practices followed in the religion, meaning the deen, and in particular the practice of the prophets, meaning the tawheed, the lawful practices in the religion, in particular the tawheed of the Anbiya, whether that then pertains to the belief, to the religious and social practice, or ethics, generally speaking. I'll repeat that. Lawful practices followed in the religion, in particular the practice of the Anbiya, whether it be pertaining to the belief, the religious and the social practice, or ethics, generally speaking. Meaning everything, from Aqidah to Minhaj to Fiqh, which is all ibadah anyway. You missed it all. Okay, no problem. We can say the Sunnah is whatever has been attributed to the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his sayings, his action, or his consent, or description of the way he was looking, or his character, or his biography. Okay? His saying, his action, and his consent. That's the Sunnah of the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The description of the way he looks or looked is a better word to say, not looks. Yeah. Or his character or his biography. Shall I write it down on the board? Yeah. Okay. No? Yeah? Okay, go on then. Okay. At least then no one else can ask 10 times afterwards. Okay. So whatever has been attributed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his sayings, actions, consent, or description on the way he looks. Yeah, so on the way he looks could be, for example, the fact that he had a beard. Yeah, or his clothing, meaning his physical appearance. For example, whether he wore a hat or didn't wear a hat, whether he had a miswak, whether he didn't have a miswak. Yeah. Also, his character, or, and this one nobody wants to know about today, his biography. What was his life about? What was he doing? What was he up to in Mecca? What was he up to in Medina? What did he go to Taif for? What was Rome all about? What was Persia all about? What was going on? What was the deal? Now, let's just continue to write on the board, in fact. When we say sayings, we call it qawl. Yeah? Actions, consent, we can also call consent approval. I hope you can see this, but
Actions is what?
feel and taqreer, his consent, his actions. Where's his attribute? Okay, description of the way he looks. Okay, his attribute, his description of the way he looks is also attribute. You can write down. And this is his sifa. Now, I'm going to have to come over here. This could be let me write this down and then his sifa could be his physical, his moral, or anything ascribed to him. that obviously goes back to, again, his character. But we want to have a little bit more broader understanding of the word sunnah. When we look at sunnah, I want our mind to open up like that, so we can see everything. Everything about the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, if you got that all down, which one?
Ascribed. Sifa. The last one in Sifa.
Sifa.
Ascribed.
Physical. Yeah, ascribed. Physical, moral, or anything ascribed to him. So anything physical about him, anything moral about him, anything ascribed to him, that is known as sunnah. Now, some of the jurists, some of the fuqaha, they use other terms, specific terms now in regards to sunnah. Let me mention some of them. One of them, the first one is called, we'll mention about 4 of them, and you can write these down. If I hope you've got all of that down. Emphasize sunnah. This is known as sunnah mu'akkidah, and emphasize sunnah. Another term which is used by the fuqaha is known as the sunnah of guidance, sunnah al-huda. Yeah? Such as whatever the Prophet he ordered or emphasized in word or deed. Yeah? Sunnah of guidance, sunnah al-huda. So first one is sunnah mu'akkidah, emphasize sunnah. Second one is sunnah al-huda. Then there's a third one known as a non-emphasized sunnah, and that is known as sunnah ghair mu'akkidah.
What's the difference between the first two?
The first two?
What's the difference?
Between the first two. Okay. So the first one, emphasized sunnah, is someone where you can't leave at all. You can't leave at all, yeah? Then the sunnah of guidance is something more in relation to aqeedah. So we can say the difference between the two, and emphasize sunnah is general, and that could be in regards to aqeedah or fiqh issues, yeah? But sunnah al-huda is more specifically related to anything in regards to aqeedah matters. Again, both of them we can't leave. It's not a matter of a choice. But this classification, ulama, they make it in order to speak about a particular subject matter. For example, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he spoke about the Christians, the Nasara, about the paintings that they made inside their own churches. And he said, this is shirk. Yeah? So this is known, as we can classify this as, by his own words, as being sunnah al-huda. He's giving us a form of guidelines in regards to not committing shirk. Then non-emphasized sunnah, sunnah ghair mu'akkidah, is a sunnah which he used to do, and sometimes he never used to do. So sometimes he used to leave it, sometimes he never used to do it. It's not emphasized the way of, for example, sunnah mu'akkidah, for example, grow your beard, lahya. This one we say it has a wazn, it has a weight of being wajib. When the Prophet has said it's wajib, then it's wajib. Now the ulama, they use these terms, and there's other terms as well, by the way, yeah? So I didn't mention the fourth one. The fourth one is a sunnah of a habit. Yeah? The sunnah of a habit. That habit, if you do it, fine. Sunnah of a habit. Yeah, that's the fourth one, yeah? Sunnah al-a'da. Sunnah al-a'da. Sunnah of a habit. Now this one, for example, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he disliked eating onions. That's just his preference. Yeah? If you don't want to eat onions, and you want to say, okay, yeah, I don't want to eat it because the Prophet never liked it, that's fine, you can do that. Yeah? But when you start to then ascribe it and then start to raise the level of it and say, no, that's a sunnah mu'akkidah of Rasulullah, then this is deviating from the path of the ulama. These classifications, in fact, were laid down in the 2nd century. In the 2nd century. Yeah? In the 2nd century. And along with those terms, then 5 legal terms were introduced. These terms all of us should know. They are fard, sunnah, mubah, makruh, and haram. All of our actions, they fall into one of these 5. Yeah? So fard, sunnah, mubah, makruh, and haram. Now, what I need to mention to you is matter very important, is that the ulama, they stress that all of the worship which is categorized as sunnah, is obligatory. And it's not a matter which is permissible. Okay? Now, other categories which they make mention of and there's so many, but I'm going to mention them very, very quickly. You don't have to write these down, but if you catch a few of those, it'll be good for you. Something praiseworthy, mandub. Something desirable, refinement, obedience, supererogatory, drawing near, recommended, excellent, excellence, or something which is the best, or kamal. These are many, many different terms. If you look at the meaning of sunnah, they will have many, many different terms which the ulama of fiqh which they use. Right now we're not so much interested in the definition of all of these terms, because these terms are for an alim who's going to be extracting evidences and making classifications in regards to ahkam of the sharia. That's not what we're talking about here. Following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we want to understand it just in a broader sense of the word, from the Arabic meaning, as from the linguistic meaning, as well as the sharia meaning. So when we say the sharia meaning, we say it is the sayings and the actions and the consent of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and whatever has been ascribed to him. Anything extra which you can add to that in regards to his physical or his moral or anything which is ascribed to him from his character or from his biography, good. It's good for dawah and it's good for your own self to know first and foremost anyway, yeah? But it's a nice way of comprehensively understanding the sunnah. Why? Because some people, they will say, yeah, Aki, this is only the sunnah. Like in Pakistan, they say that. You don't need to do this, it's only sunnah. This is only, I'm not talking about the prayer now, yeah? Nawafil prayer. We're talking about the bid. So some people, they say we only follow the Quran, we don't follow the sunnah. So we don't need to follow the sunnah. Well, the sunnah is the sunnah of Rasulullah. The sunnah of Rasulullah is also known as al-wahi. Whatever Rasulullah says, it is wahi. And that's why the scholars, they even went to the point of saying that even when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even when he makes a noise with his own mouth, like ha, like that, then that is also a form of wahi, is a form of revelation that he's speaking. Imam Dahabi, he said in a very long-winded statement, rather the sunnah is whatever the Prophet made sunnah and the rightly guided caliphs after him. As for consensus, meaning ijma', it is whatever the ulama of the ummah, both early and late, have unanimously agreed upon, through either assumed or something which is a tactic agreement, meaning a form of something which is assumed or some type of ijtihad. Whoever deviates from such consensus amongst the successors or their successors is not tolerated for him alone. As for those who deviate from the three above imams, and he mentions the imams of Sunnah, then such is not named a deviation from consensus nor from the Sunnah. Meaning, if a scholar, he makes a matter of ijtihad in a particular matter and you deviate away from that, it doesn't mean you're deviating away from the sunnah. The sunnah that we're emphasizing here is something which is qati, something which is clear cut, which there is no room for ijtihad. There are areas of ijtihad and scholars will differ on this. For example, trimming of the beard, for example, not shaving of the beard, but trimming of the beard. So some scholars, they will say, for example, you can only trim the beard in regards to if one hair, for example, is like 4 meters long and it's longer than the other one, you can trim this one, yeah? But not trimming it as in like, okay, I'm going to get a machine and I'm going to do like a grade 0 and a couple of lines from here and a couple of patterns and Union Jack there and EDL on the other side as well. You can't do that kind of business, yeah? So those matters, that's not called deviating away from the away from the sunnah. And he said, okay, the rest of it is very long. It's in regards to another scholar, and it will take us away from the topic. So what do? We make ta'assi to Rasulullah. We resemble him. Resembling him is known as ta'assi. Ta'assi. Resembling him in everything, even his movements. Yeah, so even the way he walked. And this is why previously I covered a class about the ahkam of walking. You can look that up on YouTube. We said what kind of walking is allowed and what kind of walking is not allowed. The crazy camel walking is not allowed. Walking backwards is not allowed. Walking on one foot is not allowed. Yeah, walking like a like a peasant is not allowed. Yeah, walking like someone who's begging is not allowed. Yeah, walking straight, looking at your place, not too fast, not too slow, one foot in front of the other, but not literally, otherwise you'll trip over. Yeah, and all of the movements. So everything, the way he walked, the way he moved, everything in regards to the way he ate. in regards to the way he was sleeping, in regards to the way he entered the toilet, in regards to the way he left the toilet, in regards to what he done in the toilet as well. For example, we don't have talking in the toilet at all. At all. We don't have any talking. So none of this business of, like, for example, I know a lot of brothers, they do this. In the wudu area, you're making half wudu. Assalamu alaikum, kayfa halik? And a whole conversation is going on in between and you're washing your hands. This is worship you're doing. You're supposed to be purifying yourself for salah. You can't be talking in between the wudu. Nothing. Just go in there, do your business and leave. It's not a place of social entertainment and some community center. You know, you don't go and sit there and start having sandwiches and all this kind of stuff. And evidence for this is chapter Ali Imran, chapter 3, verse 31. Say, O Muhammad, in kuntum tuhibbun Allah fattaba'uni. If you really love Allah, then follow me, and Allah will love you and forgive you of your sins. If you really love Allah, then follow me. Allah will love you and forgive your sins. Also, chapter Al-Ahzab, chapter 33, verse 21. Indeed, in the Messenger of Allah, you have a good example to follow for him who hopes in meeting Allah and the last day and remembers Allah much. Another evidence is chapter Al-Anfal, verse 20. O you who believe, obey Allah, obey the Messenger, and turn not away from him whilst you are hearing. Whilst you are hearing. Now, obedience to the Prophet is associated with obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal, and it's been mentioned in the Quran, and I've just mentioned to you 3 verses, but it's actually been mentioned on 40 occasions. On 40 occasions, it's been mentioned that if you obey the Prophet, it is as if you are obeying Allah Azza wa Jal. How then can someone contradict the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? We need to be aware of this so that we don't do the same mistake. Now, let's mention these points, and they are 4 points. How can someone contradict the Sunnah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Number 1 is adopting a doctrine or a theory and trying to reshape Islam to suit that doctrine or to suit themselves. So adopting a doctrine, an ideology, for example, like democracy, and trying to reshape Islam to suit themselves. So people say, look, in Islam we have something called shura, and in Islam, in the Kuffar they have something called democracy. So because it's the same thing, we call it shurocracy. This is complete rubbish. Shura is consultation on the matter which is originally mubah. Shura is consultation on a matter which is originally mubah, permissible. So we can consult one another whether we're going to have apples or oranges, or whether we're going to have chicken, or whether we're going to have lamb. But inside the parliament, they don't make shura on that which is mubah, and they certainly don't look to what Allah said and the Messenger said. What do they make shura on? Kufr and shirk and haram. Everything which is impermissible. Everything which is complete batil. Second way someone can contradict the Sunnah of Rasulullah is considering a man to be a criteria by which to judge the Sharia and a measure of truth. Considering a man to be a criteria by which to judge the Sharia and a measure of truth, and referring to a man or men instead of referring to the Sharia. So for example, the law of the land said, my prime minister said, my ruler said, my sheikh said, my scholar said, all of this sort of business. Yeah? Considering men to be a criteria by which to judge the Sharia and a measure of truth. So making a man a measurement of the truth. Using him as an example in order to refer to ahkam in your own life. So many examples you can think of this. For example, this man, he said, I challenge anybody who believes that you can't go to the graves, then meet me on the top of the Eiffel Tower, Sheikh Nazim. And he said, I'll jump and I dare them to jump off the Eiffel Tower with me. You go first. He didn't go first. He didn't go at all, actually. Yeah, and all this kind of stuff. Number 3 is putting words and actions before the Quran and the Sunnah. Putting words and actions before the Quran and the Sunnah. Allah said in chapter Al-Hujurat 49 verse 1 to 2, O you who believe, be not forward in the presence of Allah and His Messenger. And then he said, O you who believe, lift not your voices above the voice of Rasulullah. Don't raise your voice above the voice of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how many people will do that today nowadays? You're telling me, Aki, we know from the Sunnah of Rasulullah and the Sunnah of the rightly guided Khalifs that the difference between a mu'min and the kafir is the salah. I pray when I'm 40 years old. Hello Allah, kayfa halik? Alhamdulillah, wa anta, have kebab, have biryani, have smoke shisha. Doesn't matter. Do all the haram in the world. The prophethood revelation came to him at the age of 40. I'm not 40. When I'm 40, then I go to Hajj. Allah Ghafur Rahim. Allah will forgive me. Yeah, he is. Allah Ghafur Rahim. He's also Al-Shadid Al-Iqab as well. It's also swift in his punishment, ya fasik. You can't play around with the deen of Allah like this. Yeah? Starting to put your own words and actions before the Quran and the Sunnah. Like people, they try to justify snitching, working with the feds, working with the police, cooperating with the intelligence, and allying with the disbelievers against the Muslims. And like this idiot today, Ajmal Masroor, whatever he calls himself, came out today. We all need to shout. We all need to raise our voices against extremism and terrorism. What a kafir. Honestly. Coming out and raising his voice like this and standing as an MP in the elections and saying, doesn't matter. Quran, we can throw it out behind our backs. We can do whatever we want. Number 4 is following the example of the Prophet only in certain aspects of the Sharia and neglecting others. An example of this is, for example, you follow the Prophet ﷺ in praying and fasting, but when it comes to ruling and legislating and by way of government, you follow somebody else. Meaning you're picking and mixing. You're picking and choosing what you're going to have. So this is a form of secularism. And in fact, one of the scholars of Islam, I think it was Sheikh Nasir al-Fahad, I believe it was, or I think it was him, and he had a book, in fact, called Is the Secularist a Believer or a Disbeliever? To the nearest of that word. Meaning the one who has secularism, is he even a Muslim? The one who says Islam doesn't have no say in my own life's affairs. This is complete rubbish. Allah said in chapter Al-Baqarah verse 85, do you believe in a part of the scripture and disbelieve in a part of the book? Chapter Al-Baqarah verse 85. So what then we should do? What we should do in regards to following the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is mentioned in chapter Al-An'am, chapter 6, verse 153. وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطِي مُسْتَقِيمًا فَاتَّبَعُوهُ وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا السَّبُولَ فَتَفَرَّقَ بِكُمْ عَنْ سَبِيلِي ذَلِكُمْ وَصَعْكُمْ بِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Allah said, and say, this is my straight path, so follow it. And do not follow other ways, otherwise you'll be deviated away from my path. Now the asbab al-nuzul of this particular verse is in regards to a very famous hadith, which I will draw for you. I can draw this hadith for you because Rasulullah he drew as well in regards to this. Rasulullah he drew a line in the desert and he drew many different lines coming out of it. And he said, follow that line, follow the straight line. He said, that is my path. And be aware of the deviated paths. At the end of each one of them, there is a shaitan. A shaitan meaning a caller to the hellfire. Then Allah he revealed this verse, say this is my straight path, so follow it and do not follow other ways lest you be parted away from His way. Meaning the way of Allah and His messenger. Another meaning of sunnah. Now if we look to the scholars now, we mentioned some verses, we mentioned some hadith as well. Let's just look to what some scholars said and I'll mention two to you. Imam al-Shatibi, he mentioned that the sunnah is opposite to the bid'ah. The sunnah is opposite to the bid'ah. Imam Shafi, he said, sunnah is what I follow and what I see Ahl Hadith follow. And when he said Ahl Hadith, he wasn't talking about some group in Pakistan today, by the way. Yeah? Ahl Hadith, meaning the people of Hadith. Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Al-Firqatul Najiyah, Ta'ifa al-Mansura, Al-Ghuraba, yeah, okay. Those people, Ahl Hadith, they're the real Ahl Hadith. So to follow the Sunnah is opposite of Bid'ah. Look to the Hadith of Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Bukhari, volume 13, page 149. He said, be careful from the innovation in the deen. Every innovation, every bid'ah is a dalala, is a misguidance. And every misguidance is where? In the hellfire. Also, Aisha, she reported from Rasulullah, this is Bukhari as well, whoever does any deed not based on our teaching, it is a sin. It is a sin. And the Prophet ﷺ, in fact, in another narration, he said very famously, follow my sunnah and the sunnah of the rightly guided caliphs after me. He didn't say, follow my sunnah and the bid'ah after me. He never said that. And neither can we ever take any innovation, even if it appears good in the eyes of the people, as being a sunnah. So there's nothing called bid'ah hasana, as they say, a good bid'ah. This is complete rubbish. Sunnah is also described, my dear brothers, by the scholars and the Sahaba, in fact, and it's also recognized as al-Wahi. As al-Wahi. I mentioned this to you already, but now let me give you a narration in Sunan ad-Darimi, page 60, on the authority of Mu'adh ibn Jabal. He narrated that when he went to Yemen, the Prophet said, if you face a question in the issue of judging, what will you judge by? Mu'adh ibn Jabal, when he went to Yemen, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked Mu'adh ibn Jabal. You got it, yeah? Okay. He said, if you face a question in the issue of judging, what will you judge by? Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he said, I will judge by the Quran. I will judge by the Quran. And then the Prophet said, if you don't find an answer explicitly in the Quran, what will you then do? He said, I will look in the Sunnah. I will look in the sayings, the actions, and the consent, meaning everything that we just mentioned, of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, what if you cannot find it there then? You don't find it in the Quran, you don't find it in the Sunnah. He said, then I will make my utmost effort. I will make ijtihad. I will make ijtihad. Another meaning, and this will be the last point, is Sunnah is also known as hikmah. How many people they say that today? Yaki, have hikmah. Hikmah is to what? Surrender your land to the disbelievers, let them occupy you, give them your women, give them your children, give them all of your oil, yeah? Let them put a puppet in charge, call him Uli Amr, vote for him, call the king, mashallah, Amir al-Mu'mineen, yeah? Praise the Saudi army, and anybody who spits in the face of an American soldier, then tell him off and call him a Khariji, yeah? And anyone who wants to come Hajj to the Islamic State of Saudi Arabia, yeah, then make sure he's got a visa and he can't stay there. And by law, he's not allowed to marry an Arab woman as well. Yeah, the list is endless. The list is endless. No jizya, you're the dhimmi, complete opposite. Yeah, they say, yeah, Aki, this is hikmah. Aki, where's the wisdom? Be sharp, be shrewd, be clever, be munafiq, be kafir. This is good. This is something which is good. Allah Azza wa Jalla said in chapter An-Nisa, verse 113. But for the favor of Allah to you, O Prophet Muhammad, and His mercy, a party of them intended to lead you astray, but they only led themselves astray. And they did not harm you by anything. Allah sent down to you the kitab and the hikmah, and He has taught you that which you did not know. The bounty of Allah to you is ever so great. So Allah, He mentioned here two words here. He sent down to you the kitab and the hikmah. Al-hikmah. Hikmah here is the sunnah. Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In the tafsir of this ayah, chapter An-Nisa, verse 113. So anytime any brother or any so-called brother, but he's actually a sister dressed up as a brother, yeah, comes to you and says to you, Ayaki, you need to have hikmah. Mention this verse and then mention him the tafsir of this verse, which is Abdullah ibn Abbas. He said, Kitab and hikmah means Quran and Sunnah. Hikmah, ya aki, is Kitab and the Sunnah. It's not the rash that you got inside your own heart and the rash on your own bottom. The reason why you got a rash on your heart and your bottom is because you follow your own ration. And we don't follow our own ration. Umar ibn Khattab, he said, one day there will be people who debate with you the ayat and they'll bring shubuhat, they'll bring doubts. Free them with the sunnah. The people of sunnah are more knowledgeable on the book than anyone else. Meaning the shubuhat which people they bring to you today, for example, Allah said, those who do not rule and judge by whatever Allah has revealed, they kufr duna kufr, they're not kafir. He said al-kafirun, but he said no, they're not kafir. What a contradiction. Allah said al-kafirun and he said no, they're not kafir. It's like people, another extreme group of people. Allah said, Kul ya ayyuhal kafirun. Allah said, no, Allah meant potential Muslim. So why didn't Allah say potential Muslim? Why did Allah say, Kul ya ayyuhal kafirun? He said, oh you who disbelievers, I don't worship what you worship. They translate the verse and it means something else. So, oh you disbelievers, I don't worship what you worship today, but tomorrow I may worship whatever you worship tomorrow. And you can worship me, whatever I worship. And if you don't feel like worshiping, it doesn't really matter. But we all worship the same thing, interfaith. How do you reconcile interfaith with this verse? Chapter of Al-Kafirun. Sa'id ibn Jubair, he commented very nicely on one ayah, and I wish I had the reference for this verse, but we can find it maybe afterwards. Allah said that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, there will be some people who will come, and their faces will be bright with nur, and some people, their faces would be dark. Some people, their faces will be dark. Now, when we hear this verse, automatically, if we follow our own ration, which we don't, we follow the understanding of the ashab, of Rasulullah, the Sahaba, our mind will tell us that those people whose faces will be bright with nur will be who? Ahl Jannah, the people of Tawheed, right? And those people whose faces will be dark will be the people who are kafir. In fact, Sa'id ibn Jubair, he said, he said the best deed is to be on Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Those people whose faces will be bright, he said they are Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and the best deed is to do it upon the way of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. However, look to Abdullah ibn Abbas, what he said about this verse. He said, those people whose faces will be bright will be Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and those people whose faces would be dark would be Ahlul Bidah, the people of innovation. People of innovations. We get the reference for this verse. I really forgot the verse, but on Day of Judgment, some people will come with their faces bright, and some people will come with their faces dark. Those people whose faces will be bright will be people of Sunnah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, specifically being mentioned here, yeah, by Sa'id ibn Jubair, yeah, that they are Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So not just people who follow Sunnah here and there, like even Barelwis, they could be following some Sunnah if they do, yeah. It is? Okay, excellent. 38. Okay, chapter Al-Abasa, verse 38. Okay, 38 to 40. So those people whose faces will be bright are those people upon the way of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah in everything, in Aqidah and Minhaj. Those people whose faces will be dark will be Ahlul Bidah. And when we say Ahlul Bidah, we don't just mean in one or two areas they've done some Bidah. Maybe they're doing some action of worship which was not considered to be worship, and that is bid'ah, meaning even bid'ah in their own aqidah. And someone could be mubtadi from his own aqidah. That bid'ah could be bid'ah kubra, which takes him outside the fold of Islam, or something which is considered to be kufr akbar, such as the scholars, they're in agreement. The one who says the Quran is makhluk, the created word of Allah, which this is kufr akbar. Doesn't mean we're calling every single person a kafir as a result of that, otherwise there'll be nobody Muslim left. Everybody will end up calling kafir. Yeah? But we do understand the hadith of Rasulullah, we mentioned it previously as well, that the ummah will be divided into 73 firqa, and all will be in the hellfire except one. Those people who will be in Jannah, whose faces, who are the minority sect, Ahl Jannah, who go to Jannah without any accountability for their own aqidah, they are Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So I do want to go through this term with you at another point, and as a whole subject matter much later on when we discuss Minhaj and who are the safe sect. We want to study this topic with you about who is Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and the term Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, because some deviant people today, including some Mu'tazili today, they allege that the term Ahl Sunnah is a bid'ah. They claim that this term Ahl Sunnah is a bid'ah, so we need to disprove this allegation that the term Ahl Sunnah is a bid'ah. And the reason why they make this allegation and throw this around is because they don't like it when you say to them that we need to follow the Sahaba. So either they want to blindly follow a madhab, or madhabism, as we find today. There's nothing wrong with following a juristic understanding of any of the Aimah of Ahl Sunnah, such as Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi, Imam Malik. But when you start to become muqallid to somebody who's attributing himself to Imam Abu Hanifa, who came 4 centuries afterwards, and he's saying a statement which clearly contradicts his statement, then how can that ever work? Like, for example, people throw around all the time that Imam Malik or Imam Abu Hanifa, he said you need to obey the law of the land. And then they attribute it and say, oh, Imam Abu Hanifa, maybe he was talking about Dar al-Kufr. Can you imagine Imam Abu Hanifa saying such a statement? He will never say such a statement. The very same people nowadays who claim they are Hanafi today in the Asian subcontinent, look to their Aqidah and their Minhaj and their Al-Wala al-Bara compared to that of Imam Abu Hanifa. Imam Abu Hanifa, he was not a murji like some people they claim, and he wasn't an ikhwani as some people they try to make out. It wasn't the case at all like that. Okay, so that will conclude our first module, and next week we're going to go through the topic of Al-Aqidah, and I believe that we should go through it in some detail. I think we should go through the topic of the sources of Aqidah, where do we derive our Aqidah from, and the detailed matters of Aqidah. I don't mean like spending 6 weeks just on one particular topic, such as, for example, Al-Asma wa Sifat, and we did spend like 5-6 weeks on this previously, but all of the articles of faith, I think we should give them their own individual time as much as we can. And also we'll still study all the other topics which we mentioned. The Sharut of the Shahada, the conditions of Shahada, the Ruqnayn of the Shahada, Nawaqid al-Islam. These 3, obviously we need to study them in depth as much as possible as we can. Okay? Anything good I said, it's all from Allah. Any mistakes that are all by my own. Wa sallallahu Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Any mistakes that I made are all from me, and any good is all from Allah. If you missed any references, feel free to ask me, inshallah.